Thank you very much. It's my proud privilege to be the inaugural speaker for this inaugural edition of the TEDxDPSSL Youth on the broad theme of the labyrinth of light. Let me begin with the famous Sanskrit sloka, Tamaso ma Jyotirmaya, from darkness to light. In the linear physics world, light is fast, light is linear. Light reaches its destinations in a unidirectional world. But the theme today is a labyrinth of light. The labyrinth is where the light gets trapped, passes through crevices, encounters walls, and because it is a labyrinth, and this is not a black hole, the light finds its path at the head of it. This indeed is the journey of India, the journey of its very ancient past, the more proximate past, and the journey of its colonial period, of its ups and downs, of the present, of its future, and what lies ahead of India. Let me speak to you on this broad theme of where India was, taking into account the broad theme which you have, the labyrinth of light. For millennia, India has been the light of the world. The light of the world, why? Think of the Indus Valley civilization. When did the Indus Valley civilization begin? To have conquered, went to Mesopotamia, fostered trade, brought the world together in that old world which you have forgotten. That was India. That was followed, of course, by the Vedic period, which then found the roots in the agrarian economy, enabled settled agriculture, enabled the practice of artha, which meant the material values of life. Think of an India then followed by the great Gupta and the Maurya Empire 4,000 years ago, contemporary of what the Egyptian civilization was. That was India of that time. That was the India recounted in the acts and what happens in the creation of centers of global excellence. The Nalanda University, with which I was proudly associated. In fact, as a member of parliament, I recall that in piloting the bill of that time, on the creation of the Nalanda University bill, I recalled a very famous quotation from the travels of Huan Sang, who had come to India. When he went to Nalanda, the monks of Nalanda implored him, "Where are you leaving this country? A country of enlightenment, a country to leave this enlightenment to go to the country of Maleksha, known for the part he was going to." And do you know what he replied? And that embeds the knowledge of India, that embeds what India was at that time. He recounted, who would be so unfortunate at not having gathered this intelligence, not to share it, this intelligence, with the rest of the world. The monks put their head down, and that's how he departed for China, where he carried a lot of documents, which was translated in the Wild Goose Pagoda, which I had the honor to then visit much, much, much later. That was the India of that time. Recount of an India that when the famous economic historian, revered all over, Angus Madison, wrote the history of the world, that up to the first millennia, India alone contributed 30 to 35% of global GDP. It's a formidable part of the global prosperity. That was India. And then came the downturn with the colonial conquest, Around the period, I would say, the Portuguese were the first to arrive. Their interesting way in which the path to India was found. When I had accompanied Prime Minister Vajpayee to the burial grounds of Vasco da Gama, the film was shown that till then, till Vasco da Gama, all travelers from Europe traveled south and traveled nowhere. It was an Arab trader who said, you want to go to the fabled land. After so many days, you start traveling up. He then hit upon India as a land when he hit upon, Vasco da Gama hit upon Cochin, followed the Portuguese, and then, of course, the rise of the famous or infamous East India Company. And so within 100 years of our colonial conquest, India, which contributed 35% of the global GDP of that time, was reduced to 5% of global GDP. That was the turn, a very, very decisive turn. And the turn of independence. India was already disabled. Indian institutions had been emasculated. India's confidence had been devastated. When we gained independence in 1947, what did we inherit? We inherited, no doubt, many good things too. We had built institutions of learning, institutes of education, road connectivity, rail connectivity, those things which have stood well as we go along and see the future ahead of us. But we also inherited very, very small amounts in the treasury. And as soon as therefore we ran down the sterling balances, so to say, we hit upon our first balance of payments crisis when, as early as 1957. We did not learn from the great knock which came in 57. We did not correct course. India, and I'm doing a book on it, has been a sad story of missed opportunities, of opportunities missed and some grasped, which I have mentioned before. But then, of course, from 57 onwards, we adopted a growth model which did not enable India for the next 30 years to have a GDP which could exceed and enable us, given our demographic compulsions, for per capita income to rise at just 1.6% per annum. A 1.6% per annum per capita growth is what came to be pejoratively described as Raj Krishna to the Hindu rate of growth. There was nothing Hindu about it. That was his own way of putting it in an unfair way, because Hinduism does not teach you creeping change. Hinduism teaches you decisive change. But nonetheless, the world decided to call it a rate of growth of per capita income which does not exceed more than 1.6% growth. That was the phenomena for the first 30 years of our independence. And what was happening to the rest of the world? When I visited Japan as a college student to represent India in an international debate in 61, 62, Japan's reconstruction had begun. Shinkansen was not present. The local trains were all that Japan had. And yet, that was an inflection point. That while Japan was building and rebuilding its strategy, we were rebuilding a socialist era, a mindset trapped with distrust of private capital, a mindset trapped in excessive state regulation. That continued. For instance, it's always an enigmatic question for me that why didn't India learn from what the Asian tigers had done? Why did we waste our time? And time was so precious that the rest of the world continued. In fact, it has always troubled me that when even our country to the north, which was had large labor, in 74, after the great agricultural revolution which they had encountered, they began to change their economic policies. Why did India have to wait till 1991, having undergone successive balance of payments crisis, having undergone many other changes, India remained plastered to distrust of private capital and to really stifle the innovative capabilities of its people. Then came 1991, which you all know in your mindset. In 1991, India had a choice. What was the choice? To either pursue the path which had been discredited or to forge ahead. It forged ahead a path of rapture, but a path of renewal. We chose that path of renewal. And what was a 1.6% growth of GDP then catapulted India currently is growing at close to 7%, fastest growing economy in the world for the fourth successive years, with decisive changes in its infrastructure. Consider the fact that in the last 10 years itself, 248 million people in India, larger than the size of West Europe, have left extreme poverty. Look at our road connectivity. Look at our digital connectivity. India is well on the path of becoming a decisive factor in global change. And yet, is the story over? No, it is not. We have 6 important challenges. First challenge is, as we speak, the only certainty is uncertainty. The world which we trusted, which we knew, is being changed every hour. It may have even changed from the time when I began speaking a few minutes ago. How do you manage and maneuver when geopolitics spills over into geoeconomics, and geoeconomics spills over into geotechnology? That is the first challenge. The fine line between balancing geopolitics, geoeconomics, and geotechnocracy. That's the first challenge. The second challenge is, how does India continue to manage the technological changes? Technological changes, AI, of course, is an inevitability. But AI not as a force for surveillance, AI not as a force for war, but AI as a force to enhance productivity and to enhance economic growth. Do we have the ability to manage AI in a manner where productivity changes create gainful employment opportunities? That is a big challenge of keeping abreast. The third big challenge which we have in managing demography. Demography and migration remains an important continuing factor. The fourth important challenge is to continue with the path that we have. I talked about the fact that the dragon had went far ahead and the elephant's pace has been a slow, wanting one. But the elephant has one great advantage. It has memory, it has endurance. In the Chinese society which we are talking about, the dragon has paced ahead with more and more excessive concentration of power. India has forged ahead with democracy and debate. It has forged ahead by combining the virtues of growth with the virtues of human freedom. These are not very ordinary congruence and confluence. We value human freedom. We value growth. But equally, the challenge, therefore, of the government is how to combine its economic efficiency and growth with a growth which is equitable and the growth which is inclusive. So as I speak to you today, you look forward to in India, what is our quest? And in India of 1947, when we hope to achieve the status of becoming a developed economy to occupy a rightful place among the comity of nations, to recreate history in a certain way, déjà vu, if you would like to say, from where India began in the first millennium. And as we look to not only to 1947, but look to 1974 when we would be a $500 trillion economy. At that particular point in time, we would have redone, recreated, and lived our legacy back. That's the India. I invite you to be part of that. As Swami Vivekananda had said very rightly, do not wait for change. Be the change. Be part of that great process of which India journey is now midway through. You have the advantage, great advantage of having come to this stage. You are entering a world much better than your parents or grandparents would have entered. You're entering India to be part of this great change which India is encountering and becoming a part of this great change. And as this elephant then moves forward, the elephant has two great ability. It has memory and it has endurance. India has endured the ups and downs of history. India has endured lots of great moments with great moments of disappointment. India has endured. The endurance of India and the combination of democracy and development would be India's message to the rest of the world, that human freedom and economic growth are symmetrical and two faces of the same coin. I wish this seminar every success, and I wish this inaugural event every success. Thank you very much for this opportunity.